Davis. This event has been months in the making, and thanks to the diligent efforts of the committee, this bima is adorned with an abundance of rabbinic star power. To put it lightly, this is going to be a day to remember. Thank you to Yehuda Edry, B'nai Torah's youth director, and the Heritage Academy Choir for getting us off to a beautiful start. And having school children featured at the beginning of the program in reality focuses us on one of the underlying themes of today's gathering, the spirit and promise of youth. Here we are, installing one of our youngest rabbis ever. And this event comes right on the heels of the JCC Maccabi Games, just 3 short weeks ago, when over 800 Jewish teens landed in our town, and even right here in this building, for 5 days of social, spiritual, and athletic activities. The excitement and community spirit of the Maccabi Games still reverberates throughout Western Massachusetts. And that spirit, that lift we get from the presence of dynamic young people, is punctuated yet again today as we officially install Rabbi Davis. From Brookline to Berkeley to B'nai Torah, Max Davis has arrived. When he got here a year ago at just 28 years of age, Rabbi Davis was almost the youngest ever of our rabbis, second only to Rabbi Norman Lamb. And if you're going to be second to someone, that's not a bad choice. But it's precisely his youth that has won over everyone in the entire area, from child to adult to colleague. He has shown himself to be totally available and eager to participate. He is a doer, a leader, and because he's so youthful, he can fit seamlessly into many situations. For instance, when the Maccabi Games were here, Rabbi Davis was right in the thick of it. He was called up during the glorious opening ceremonies to say Shechianu, and instantly captivated the massive audience of teenage athletes and spectators with his relaxed and casual style. The older man sitting next to me in the stands was thoroughly impressed. He leaned over to me and said, "What an amazing young man. What sport is he playing this week?" His parents will tell you that growing up, he had all the makings of a great rabbi. For example, so advanced were his oratory skills that, at his bar mitzvah, guests were asked in advance not to bring gifts. Instead, as they arrived, they were handed Max Davis pledge cards. And he encouraged them during his speech to give just a little more this time. He was truly destined for greatness. Age is just a number, they say, and though numerically young, Rabbi Davis has filled his years with purpose and accomplishment. Programming for Jewish children and teens, middle school teacher, special needs teacher, NCSY organizer, volunteer worker in Biloxi, Mississippi, and he even served time on Rikers Island, literally as a chaplaincy intern. Uniquely, he also spent time as a park ranger in Boston. And it was there that he found he could speak with the animals. He could converse with the birds, the rabbits, and the deer. It was here that he honed his teaching style, finding that every being learns differently. As he tells the story, this revelation stemmed primarily from the Gemara class he taught to a family of 3 bears. He noted that, try as he may, one of the bears thought his teaching methods were too hard, one thought he was too soft, and one of them said he was just right. This overall skill, as it turns out, would be the secret to his success. Rabbi Davis knew that communicating with wild and potentially dangerous creatures would come in very handy when facing a synagogue board of directors. Yes, the youth is our future, and certainly B'nai Torah has embraced that sentiment by bringing Rabbi Davis to the community. In return, Rabbi Davis has shown in the past year that he has the knowledge, wit and wisdom, passion and compassion to lead this congregation, while being young enough to do it with a fresh outlook, endless energy, unprecedented creativity, and unbridled enthusiasm. Example, he introduced the Mincha tailgate party because, as he says, Mincha tastes better with meat. Or perhaps you attended the Talmud and fruit salad session this past week. You can't help but notice his why not approach. It endears you to the person, the program, and most noticeably, the shul. As a testament to his modest nature, Rabbi Davis felt he could really have done without all this attention today. Though appreciative for the time, effort, and energy that went into it, he doesn't feel he needs the spotlight. Hearing him say that is both comforting and refreshing. It's true. There's something special about this young-looking, unassuming, baseball cap-wearing, quick-witted rabbi. Something that attracts young and old alike. Something that makes you want to listen and learn. Something that makes you want more. And it's not just us here that realize this. Right behind me are two internationally recognized rabbis, legendary figures who are here today for the very same reason. Because Rabbi Davis is indeed someone special. Fittingly, B'nai Torah is also a youth at only a couple of years old. But it was born of a colorful and beautiful blending of history and tradition. And with Rabbi Davis's guidance, it will grow up as an institution filled with promise and following in the glorious footsteps of its parents, keeping the faith, so to speak, in the Springfield area. I'm honored to be a part of this program, but moreover, anxious to bear witness to Rabbi Davis's installation and ultimate success. As I said, this is going to be a day to remember. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of B'nai Torah, Ken Abrahams.
You can attract the youth, but they also attract the older people, okay? We have the youngest rabbi in the community, but the oldest president. Good afternoon. Welcome. It's wonderful to see so many B'nai Torah families, such a large number of our community people here today to witness the installation of Max Davis as rabbi of Congregational B'nai Torah. A special thanks to our search committee, co-chaired by Bart Narenberg and Dr. Carmela Moan, who interviewed many candidates for the position but decided that Rabbi Max Davis, the well-educated and trained park ranger, was exactly the type of rabbi we needed. And as we celebrate today, again, a special thanks to Chairman Beverly Hirsch on our installation committee, who worked so hard and put so much time to make this event as beautiful as it is significant. In the space of 1 year, Rabbi Davis has already proven himself to be a remarkable spiritual guide, a scholar, Pied Piper for our kids, a leader with incredible energy, and in every way a mensch. While today only Rabbi is being installed, I do want to pay tribute to his wife, Dahlia, his partner in every respect. She is talented, learned, and hospitable, and like her husband, she is a precious gift to our community. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention her delightful 1-year-old daughter, Rebea. I must tell you that little Rebea has already changed the complexion of our services, which she regularly attends. Now she often is joined by many of her pals in strollers. Any day now, we expect her to take over leading a Donut Love on Shabbos. When he arrived, Rabbi Davis knew that B'nai Torah faced a big challenge. Having just completed phase 1, the official merger of 3 Orthodox synagogues, and phase 2, the creation of a space appropriate to our needs in this former B'nai Jacob synagogue. We now have Rabbi Davis to lead us in the critical phase 3, the challenge of building a more vibrant and expanded Orthodox community. With his rabbinic leadership, tremendous warmth, optimism, and active outreach, Rabbi Davis is already working hard and reaching out successfully in our community. I must admit that early on I questioned how a 29-year-old rabbi who looked 17 to lead a congregation as seasoned and as diverse as ours. But I must admit that after a year now, he looks closer to 19 than 17. It took us only a short time to realize that Rabbi Davis's youth and inner wiring proved him with an amazing level of energy. Not only is he deeply knowledgeable in every area of Jewish learning and practice, but he's the most honorable rabbi I've ever known. After he conducts morning services and study, has a few meetings, he may be off to handle a lot of kosher supervision responsibility, which he takes very seriously. And after lunch and learn class, he may drop off a meal to a homebound congregant, which, by the way, sometimes he prepares himself. And after that, you can have a meeting with teens for ice cream and discussion, or even, if you can believe it, a skateboarding session. And he'll also find time to dash off one of his daily emails to the congregation to announce a class or a program. And of course, to thank every person who did something to help out at the show. By now it's only 4 o'clock and he's starting the second half of his day, which will be as long and busy as the first. When I check my emails in the morning, it's not unusual for me to see a message from the rabbi sent at 2 a.m. He never stops. He's not only a doer, he's a brilliant thinker and teacher. He is the product of Harvard University, Yeshiva University, and Yeshiva B'nai Torah. Whether you're listening to a sermon or a drash or attending one of his many classes, you know that no matter where you are on the spectrum, you're going to learn something new that's important to your own Jewish growth. He is a wise and gifted teacher, and if you have not heard a sermon or attended one of his classes, I hope you do so soon. It is evident that Rabbi Davis's heart belongs to B'nai Torah, and our congregation's issues are his issues. And just as he is an important figure in our lives, we know that we are important to him. Whether you are 7 or 17 or 70, each of us can connect in our own way to Rabbi Max Davis. This is why we as a congregation wanted to do something big to celebrate this formal anniversary. It wasn't easy. The rabbi, for all his accomplishments, is an exceedingly humble person. When we first proposed our plans, he objected. Oh, no, what do we need this for? I'm here already. It took some pressure to get him to agree to this community celebration, and listening to all this praise is not easy for him. The trouble is, there's so much to say about this good, down-to-earth, and extraordinary man. But what he probably wants to do now is get to the strawberry shortcake. We are not as anxious to have this part of the program end. We rather like reflecting on the success of the past year, and we enjoy the good feeling of today. To further the celebration, it's certainly an honor to have as speakers two of the foremost leaders of modern Orthodoxy, Rabbi Avi Weiss and Rabbi Yitz Greenberg. The fact they both responded so enthusiastically when invited to take part in today's program illustrates their affection for and confidence in our colleague and friend Max Davis. In a recent newspaper interview, Rabbi Davis said that he feels blessed to be a rabbi. Well, we at Congregation B'nai Torah are blessed that he's our rabbi. I want to thank you all for being here tonight and today, and mazel tov to the Davis family.
Thank you, Ken. We'd like to take this opportunity to recognize other community rabbis who have joined us today for this celebration. Rabbi David Edelman, Rabbi Yaakov Wolf, Rabbi Mark Shapiro, Rabbi Amy Walk-Katz, Rabbi Jerome Gerland, Reverend David Armenia, Rabbi Mendy Cohen, and Rabbi Daniel Lowe. Thank you all so much for being here to honor Rabbi Davis. Our first guest is no stranger to the Springfield Longmeadow area and is actually a strong supporter of Western Massachusetts as a member of the Board of Trustees of the Harold Brinspoon Foundation. His credits run the gamut of Judaic life. As a rabbi, an author, a teacher, and a scholar, he has had a major impact on Jewish life. He was involved in the development of the Birthright Israel program, which by itself has touched innumerable lives. He has published works regarding the Holocaust, Jewish-Christian relations, the religious and cultural issues of pluralism, and more. His appointments include his directorship of the President's Commission on the Holocaust, and he was chairman of the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Council. Truly, his reputation and his long list of accomplishments precede him, and we are honored to welcome him back to the area and to have him here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Rabbi Yitz Greenberg.
Very close to Springfield, Longmeadow, particularly through the friendship with Harold Brinspoon and Ann Trotterman, and through them meeting the wonderful staff and board members of the Brinspoon Foundation, and through them meeting Ken Abrahams and many of the people in B'nai Torah itself. So I was very happy to be invited to participate in this installation, celebration really. Maybe you heard it here first. I can really, with confidence, predict one of the really important up-and-coming young great rabbis will be, if not yet recognized nationally, will be. And very much, I think, not at all, I don't hesitate, I'm not trying to put a weight on him by saying that this congregation is the descendant of the congregation which was served by Rabbi Longmeadow at the very beginning of his career. And the secret is to spot talent early and recognize it and use it, and you're very lucky. And of course, he is one of the great students of Rabbi Avi Weiss, who is, at least in my judgment, one of the great rabbis of our time. So again, because he is the main speaker, and because I think as people want to speak about his student and the role of the rabbi more, I'd like to use my remarks to put the whole installation celebration in context. In the context of its significance, because I think it is much more than just a local, beautiful, touching installation of a rabbi in a congregation. I believe this event has national significance, and I want to reflect upon it with you. As you heard, of course, B'nai Torah is a modern Orthodox synagogue. Modern Orthodoxy itself is a symptom, it's a product, it's also a marker of the greatest, certainly the most challenging adventure of the Jewish people in the 4,000 years of our history. This challenge which we are all living together is, of course, Judaism becoming part of modern civilization. Modern civilization made us an offer we couldn't refuse. It is a remarkable and blessed offer. Equal rights, full acceptance, which we never had, an end to our pariah status. It offers us opportunity for achievement, mind-staggering. This is the richest, most highly educated Jewish community in history, maybe in the history of the world, not just of the Jewish people. It offers us medical breakthroughs and a longer life expectancy. So it was a remarkable offer. The question is, what's the cost or what's the exchange that's expected? And of course, the first answer was, join us fully, completely, which was interpreted by many non-Jews and by many Jews, frankly, meaning join us fully means stop being different, stop being Jewish. Become one with all of us. The second price, and I never agreed, in fact, that's part of our challenge. The second price was that this culture would create power, concentrations of force, again, part of the greatness of an unparalleled nature, and given the fact that anti-Semitism and resentment of the outsider still exists, still a very powerful force, it meant that in joining this culture you would be exposed to a higher level of risk and danger than any Jewish community in history. That was the offer. And of course, overwhelmingly Jews accepted it for good reason. We accepted it because it was an irresistible opportunity. And in fact, we are living through what a recent book calls the golden age of Jewish achievement. You know it as well as I, from Nobel Prizes to leadership in education, from leadership in finance and industry to leadership in culture, art, movies, you name it. It has been a remarkable achievement, unprecedented, as I said before. And as it turned out, the rest of the offer was also part of it. It turned out that, in fact, many people, including many Jews, said, yeah, we've had the greatest surge of assimilation in the past 2 or 3 centuries, which is growing rather than weakening. And of course, we've lived through the most disastrous infliction of damage on us, first in the Holocaust and now again in Israel, where this is the only country in the world that is still surrounded by enemies who openly say it should be destroyed, who have never stopped the use of terror and war in now 60 years, and where you get majorities at the UN that are prepared to back that instead of defending its own rights. So, literally, this offer of the good and the bad is coming through for us. Now, what's this got to do with us? Well, of course, you understand that the Jewish people split out what's the best way of dealing with this opportunity and challenge. And that's what led to Orthodoxy, both modern Orthodoxy and traditional, if you will, Haredi Orthodoxy. It's what led to conservative reform. It led to a tremendous growth of secular Judaism, particularly in Israel, where the majority has a secular background. And so you have this diversity in the Jewish people, but modern Orthodoxy, and that's its main point, modern Orthodoxy said two things. One, we should join. Haredi Orthodoxy said we can't join. It's too dangerous. It will undermine us. We have to remain insular and segregated, even in modern culture. Modern Orthodoxy said we can join. This is an opportunity which we should take, but we should bring the whole tradition with us. The whole tradition. All its learning, all its practices. And again, you may not keep them all. You may not be able to learn them all, but it should be available. It should be the repertoire. And that's what modern Orthodoxy represents. We could bring the best of modernity and connect it and enrich it, or use it to enrich our tradition. And there was no reason to let any part of it go, whether or not one practiced it. That has been a very important and an influential contribution by Orthodoxy. There are, of course, many alternative viewpoints, whether it was reform saying we have to make more significant changes to be effective in this culture, whether it was conservative that said we have to be able to have a different blend of tradition and change than modern Orthodox, or the secular Jews who said, honestly, we have lost our connection, but we have a strong secular potential. What I want to refer to and why I think this moment is so important today is because we've lived through a generation of decline, substantial decline in modern Orthodoxy. It happened for a number of reasons. The United States particularly opened up more than anybody dreamed, accepted us more fully. And as a result, Jews were prepared to join more fully, and many Jews, in fact, said, let's go all the way. It's such a wonderful culture. It's treating us so well. Let's completely participate. And more Jews are willing to drop more rather than try to bring the whole thing with us. Secondly, in response, modern Orthodoxy sought to strengthen itself and build itself by moving to a more traditional, to a more right, if you will, position. The correct logic was we need more learning, we need more commitment, we need more passion. That's a very important step. The error, I believe, was, of course, the way to get that was interpreted to be more, if you will, in the ultra model, meaning more segregated, more distance from the other Jews, less willing to participate in Klal Yisrael and the total community. Took the form of an intellectual challenge, rejection of college or questioning of college and of the modern values, opposing anything that smacks modernity, such as changes or improvements in women's role, and so on and so forth. And the third reason, of course, was that modern Orthodoxy failed to move with the Jewish people. Sometimes it took a local form. You don't move to the new neighborhood where the Jews were moving to, which is what Springfield's era was, so to speak. Sometimes it took the form of not moving to the states where Jews were moving. West, southwest, southeast, major movements of Jewish population, which Orthodoxy mostly failed to participate in, and therefore lost demographic ground. This generation of decline has not been good for Orthodoxy. One example, the 1960 Jewish census in America showed 25% plus of American Jews defined themselves as Orthodox. By 1980, the survey showed 14%. By 1990, 7.7% said I'm Orthodox. Now again, it's a little strange to hear these numbers because this was a period Orthodoxy was getting stronger, it was building up, but the fact remains in terms of numbers particularly, it was dropping sharply, and that drop, more than anything else, was the decline of modern Orthodoxy. What happened was, in becoming stronger, more committed, an atmosphere was created. If you're not fully observant, you're not really welcome, or maybe you're an outsider, or maybe you're inferior, or whatever the message was. And so people voted with their feet. Now I'm telling you all this, again, this was not good for Orthodoxy, it was not good for the Jewish people altogether, and that is the real tragedy of what happened. Not good for the whole Jewish people because as modern Orthodoxy became more sectarian, it became more antagonistic, and of course the liberal movements responded with antagonism. And so in 20 years, we've had a polarization, a rejectionism, breakdown of the boards of rabbis that once united all rabbis. We've seen patrilineal decision on the reform part, which was unacceptable halachically and otherwise to conservative and orthodox. We've seen a kind of a language of nastiness, denial of the right to dignity to exist, and so on, very destructive for Klal Yisrael. We've seen an opposition to conversion. The Jews who needed a major increase in conversion to welcome in and remove the problem and the challenge of intermarriage. Instead, we've seen strong opposition and a decline in conversion. And so on and so forth. In Israel, polarization led to even worse. I won't go into the whole story. The second reason it was bad for the whole Jewish people is that the negative reaction to modern influence estranges Jews, it estranges non-Jews, the unwillingness to be more open, more receptive to dialogue and religious contact, and so on. And the third reason it was not good, frankly, is that in the end, outreach was passed. The pioneers were Yeshiva University, Rabbi Roman Lamb, that whole group were important pioneers in outreach, basically pushed aside or turned away because it became more insular, and outreach passed to Lubavitch, Eshet Torah, one could go on and on for the most part. Now again, they have done some very wonderful and some very admirable things, but in the end, this was not good for the Jewish people in one obvious way. The message becomes, the Jewish community is reaching out to you with people who are not living in the modern culture. So what's the message? If you want to be a really full, complete Jew, you can't really be fully part of this culture. Well, it's not a very effective message for the next generation. So it hasn't been good for the Jewish people, or for the community, any more than it's been good for modern Orthodoxy. And that's my point about today. But in my mind, a source of great hope and a turning point is Rabbi Avi Weiss's work in the last 2 decades, particularly. What he has come to call open Orthodoxy, what does it mean? It means an Orthodoxy that has learning, that has commitment, and that was an important emphasis that the right and the Haredim have contributed, that I think we all owe them a debt of gratitude for. But he said that buildup of learning and of understanding has to be matched by a buildup of embracing Klal Yisrael, of being open to every kind of Jew, of dropping the snide superiority that you're less observant, of rejecting the idea that in focusing on reestablishing ritual, one can neglect social justice, that in building up Jewish pride, one has to be antagonistic or not receptive to non-Jewish religions and non-Jewish positions. It's an extremely important notion of openness to the opportunity for growth in women's learning and women's leadership and women's participation in Orthodoxy as well as outside of Orthodoxy. This to me is a matter of hope, and of course more important than just a hope, he was able to attract the kind of students of your Rabbi Max Davis. I've met the students of Choveh. They come in, many of them come in with a richer background, in part because they have gone to Ivy League, maybe not the standard Jewish school. It's a combination of reasons. But they are also, as I think Rabbi Max himself is, they were inspired by this vision of being more embracing, being more open, that you could bring the whole tradition in a richer, more challenging intellectually and spiritually form, that you could, with embrace, hold, and connect people of every level of observance, not just the highest level, and that women could make an important contribution, as you see in your own experience with Danya Davis's own personal contribution, with her, not only her role model, but her teaching and her example. So to me, this is not just a celebration of the fact that this shul has a wonderful rabbi and wants to say so publicly. I don't want to neglect that, that's very important. To me, it's a celebration of something else. Modern Orthodoxy could have collapsed in this community. The merger could have failed or not gone through in the first place. The decline of Kadima, which once had Rabbi Noam Lamb, could have concluded, as it did in other cities, frankly, with a complete disappearance. And instead, at this moment, this was a moment of rebirth, renewal, and strength that's really electrifying to me personally, and I think very important to the national Jewish community.
Of gratitude to this extraordinary human being and Rabbi Yitz Greenberg. Really. It's always good to be in Harold's presence. I love when Harold comes to our bayit. And I say this openly. I once told Ludwig Jesselson, Harold, that whenever he walks into synagogue, I'm going to stand up. And I'm going to stand up because there are very few people who have been blessed the way he was blessed and the way you're blessed. But to recognize that that blessing is a responsibility and to teach the world, not only through words, but through deeds, to share, that's extraordinary. And in that sense, your foundation and you're a Rebbe as well. I want to acknowledge the presence of Rabbi Charles Friedman, who's Max's colleague, received smicha the same year. Max now serves as the senior rabbi and chaplain at the Englewood Hospital in New Jersey. And Ruthie Simon's also here. Ruthie, raise your hand. That says a lot about our open Orthodox institution. Ruthie is an extraordinary person, extraordinary woman, happens to be the director of placement and the director also of recruitment. And there are now close to 80 Chovevei rabbis. Here's my commercial. Can't help myself. All over the country. And I'm looking to relieve myself of the burden. And I'll tell you what I was thinking, Max. If Rabbi Lamb once served here and became president, I'm ready for you to step in anytime. I hope it'll be before a few decades, but maybe you never know. And Achrona Chaviva, I wanted to mention the presence of my wife, Toby, who's my partner, and really is an Eshet Chayil through thick and thin, the good times and the times of being criticized all over. And it's just wonderful to be here in this extraordinary place. I once spoke at Kadima all the way back, and I enjoyed it then. I remember that moment, even now. And now to be here with you as Rabbi Max Davis is installed, a young man who means so much to me that it's hard for me to talk about him because I've become so emotionally involved and spent because he is such an extraordinary individual. And in speaking about Rabbi Max, of course, Dalia. So I'd like to tell you a story that applies to both of you. This is both your stories. I have a custom before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I call my father, who was 93 years young, and I'd say, Abba, do you have any good stories? I'm a rabbi. A rabbi needs good stories. So this is the story he told me just recently. This is the story he said about a town that was facing great difficulties. So difficult that they decided to assemble, and they would come together in prayer. And they would recite the 23rd Psalm, Mizmor LeDavid, Hashem Ro'i Lo Echsar, the Lord is my shepherd. And that would be the sum total of the evening's moment. And then they decided that since they really wanted the psalm to have impact, that they would hire some kind of professional actor in his days, a Heston or a Brenna, someone who really can build out the 23rd Psalm. And not to make their rabbi feel bad, it was an elderly rabbi, they said to him, we'll allow you to recite the same psalm afterwards, but that's it. And everybody assembled that night, and sure enough, the actor rises and he reads the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadows of death, I fear no evil. He read every word perfectly, with such rhythm, with such syntax. His voice was flowing. He knew when to raise his voice. He knew when to lift his eyes. He knew when to drop his gestures. He knew everything there was to know. And when he was finished, everyone rose and gave the actor a standing ovation. It came time, never, for the rabbi to come forward. And he comes forward, and he was as old as Rabbi Max is young. He comes forward, and he begins to recite Mizmor LeDavid. And his voice begins to break. And every word that he recites, you could see that he was singing and dancing and crying the word in his heart and in his soul. And as he said the Mizmor LeDavid, the Lord is my shepherd, the complete audience was so mesmerized. And they too began to break. And tears flowed down so many cheeks as they cried and wondered, would this little village ever be saved? And the congregants left. That evening, the leadership of the synagogue approached the actor and said, after giving him his check, we thank you very much for reading this psalm. You read it beautifully, thank you so much. But this rabbi, our rabbi, he touched the audience even more profoundly. And this is what the actor said. When you asked me to read the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd, I memorized every word, and I made sure to read it perfectly. I knew the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd, very well. But this rabbi, he doesn't only know the 23rd Psalm, he knows the shepherd. He knows the shepherd. I would rarely say this, and as I say this, I have the chills from the top of my head to my toes. I would rarely say this about a man as young as your rabbi, or a woman as young as your rabbinit. But if I were asked to describe Rabbi Max Davis, I would say that Rabbi Max Davis walks with God. He really, really tries to feel the presence of the shepherd. And what is true about Max, about Rabbi Davis, is similarly true about Dahlia. One of my favorite sentences in all of Tanakh, in all of the Bible, is that sentence from Micha, where the prophet says, "V'hatzneya lechet im Elokecha." Walk humbly with God. This congregation is so very, very blessed because you have as your rabbi one who is searching. We can never completely feel that presence, but one who is searching to walk with God and to lead a godly life. And Rabbi Davis really reflects so many of the necessary qualities of being a rabbi, inherent in different, if you will, characteristics of what it means to be a rabbi. A rabbi is first of all a moreh. A rabbi is a teacher. Rabbis should have cognitive and intellectual ability. And that is your rabbi. And that is Dahlia. Max hails from Harvard and then went to a school that even tops Harvard, B'nai Torah. He's got it all. He really understands Torah itself, and he also has knowledge of general studies. He's a person who's not only steeped in Torah She'uchtav, but Torah She'ba'al Peh, and he not only has knowledge of Torah, he has wisdom of the world. You know, there are some people who know every word of the Talmud by heart, but they don't have wisdom of life. It's very rare that a rabbi has a combination of being a Talmid Chacham, a Torah scholar, and at the same time knows how to translate that Torah knowledge into situations and conditions and having wisdom of life. And so your rabbi is a moreh, and Talia is a morah. But a rabbi can also be a rebbe. What's the difference between being a rabbi and being a rebbe? I'll tell you. A rabbi teaches by the word. A rebbe is a model. And a rebbe teaches by action. And what I have learned over the years in the rabbinate is that the best sermon, the best of our Torah that a rabbi can give is not what a rabbi says, but it is rather what a rabbi does. And I'm telling you, in this congregation, if you want to read a book of what Jewish ethical behavior is all about, of what it is to lead a Jewish life, in this congregation and beyond, the best book you can read, watch this man. Just watch this man. Watch the way he carries himself. Watch the way he listens. I was once at a marriage encounter with Toby, and the question we were asked to write about is, why do I hear you, but I don't listen to you? Big difference between the two. Most rabbis talk. This rabbi knows how to listen. And he's a calming voice. He's a uniting voice, a conciliator, as you see what's transpired right here in Springfield. He is the Rebbe. He's the person to learn from by the model that he represents. And there's one more step for a rabbi. A rabbi is not only a moreh and not only a rebbe, but I think that a rabbi, in many ways, is the leader of the family. I affectionately call our synagogue the Bayit. Our most fundamental message is we're a home, we're a family, and everyone is welcome. All of our people and beyond, regardless of affiliation, regardless of commitment, regardless of background. And I view the rabbi as one who leads the family, as an Abba, a father, as a brother. For some in leadership, they may be to some people a son who leads, but as an Abba who loves unconditionally. That's a rabbi. Rabbis don't have to respect everything a congregant does, but a rabbi unconditionally has to love every congregant. With rabbis, whatever a congregant may do, there's no such word as retaliation. It doesn't exist. The playing field's not even. It's like a father or a mother. It's like being in a family setting. If you really love, the love has to be unconditional love. And the test of love is not how I love you when I agree with you. The test of love is how I love you when I don't agree with you. That's the test. The test of love is not only how I love you when I respect you, but how can I love you even if I'm not so sure of what you're doing. And your rabbi, Rabbi Max Davis, loves unconditionally. You will see if you've not seen it yet, and this is what a rabbi is all about. You know, we have all kinds of courses at B'nai Torah in leadership, and they're expensive courses, and I sit in on them, and I don't fully comprehend exactly what's being said by these leadership gurus. So one time, I don't know if it was your class, the Chevra got to me and they said, Rabbi Avi, what do you think about all these leadership classes? And I said, listen to them very closely. All of these ideas are very important. But before you can be a leader, before you can be a rabbi, before you learn any of that stuff, and they were coming from Harvard and Yale to teach leadership, before you have any of that, you need a couple of loves. Students said, what kind of love do you need? I said, you have to love the Jewish people. You have to love your congregants, and it has to be uncompromising. It has to be an infinite love, and no one can teach you that love. Someone may be able to read you a guidebook on leadership, but no one can teach you to love. You either have that or you don't. And your rabbi gets it. He has it. He has all of these qualities of the rabbi. The cognitive intellect of the Moreh, the Rebbe, who models, who teaches by what he does, even more than by what he says. And he has this unconditional love. To know when to be at a bedside, to know when to hold the hands and to sit with someone who has just had an extraordinary loss, to recognize that the way you reach out to one person in need is the reaching out to the world, whether it's in sorrow or whether it is in joy under a chuppah. And so, Max, Rabbi Davis, and Dahlia, I offer you the blessing of Rav Kook, my Rebbe. I've never met Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak, but he's my Rebbe. And Rav Kook once wrote the poetry of a soul. And this is what Rav Kook wrote. And I don't believe I've ever said this publicly to anyone, but Max, whom I love, I want to say this to you. Because when you read this poem by Rav Kook, which I don't have before me, but which I'll paraphrase, it's you. You're going to say it's not you because you are so absolutely self-effacing, but it's you. And here's what Rav Kook says. Rav Kook says that every human being is born with a soul, and the soul sings the song of the self. Ashira Lashem b'chayai. Let me sing to the Lord all my life. And there are those who are blessed with souls that go beyond the self. They encompass their entire kehillah. They encompass the entire community. As the psalmist writes, Shiru in the plural, Shiru Lashem Shir Chadash. Let us as a community sing a new song. And then, friends, there are souls that are so deep and so profound that they go beyond the community. And they encompass all of Am Yisrael, all of the Jewish people. In the spirit of Az Yashir Moshe U'Bnei Yisrael et Hashira Hazot, in the spirit of Moses and Miriam, who sing the song of the Lord of the Jewish people. And then open your hearts, writes Rav Kook. And Max, I share this with you. Then Rav Kook writes that there are souls that are so broad, they cannot be contained even within their own people, but they sing the song of the entire world. They sing the song of all of existence. Shiru Lashem Kol Haaretz. Sing to the Lord the entire land, the entire earth. And your rabbi is a microcosm of that concept. I fell in love with him from literally the first days when I got to know him. He is just such a human being extraordinaire. And the foundation of being a rabbi is being that mensch, is being that human being extraordinaire. And you, Rav Max, you have this Rav Kook soul. So I bless you, Dahlia. I bless you, Rabbi Davis. I bless the family and your parents, some of whom are here. What a moment of nachas for them and for grandparents. And there are some who are here in the Shema and soul. This community is so blessed to have this rabbi, and this rabbi is so blessed to have you. So I bless you, Max, and join me in this bracha. Let's join in the bracha that Rabbi Davis and Dahlia, young people, but we're never too young to ask that God bless us with health, that God bless us with life, that God bless us, that God bless you that you feel a sense of fulfillment in everything that you're doing. That God bless you with always having the fire in your hearts and souls of sharing Torah, of touching and impacting on Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, and the land of Israel, and the Torah of Israel. God bless you that you can continue having that fire of teaching and touching. May you know love between yourselves and your family.